I'm ready to pay the lunch for the whole government if you will be the members before the 2030. And in that case, I will again pay the lunch. And Ukraine, which will completely change the position of Poland, of all these countries who having benefits. Honestly, I don't think that this is realistic. I will try to be enough interesting like Boris, but I'm not so sure will I succeed in that. If you ask me this question, is it the end of the conflicts or the beginning of the new ones 20 years ago, I would say I'm optimistic. There is no way to have new conflicts in the region. Why? At that time, and I am very long in politics in Bosnia, which is also a relatively rare case, for more than 40 years, with some small break during the war, and I survived all the high representatives which were in Bosnia, including Pedi Ejdaung, and being the Serb and to survive, that was a big success. I remember I was also in Paris on big OSCE summit, which was just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, full of positive attitude. Russia together, Gorbachev there, Germany united, extremely positive attitude. And Bosnian peace was achieved thanks to the fact that Russia, United States, and Europe were together. And because of that, I think that this is the last case of successful intervention in the modern history, because they were together. And it had extremely positive impact on us at that time. What do we have now? Completely different situation. Completely. Before it was at least USA and Europe together and Russia on the other side. Now we have US, Europe somewhere trying to still to be closest with the US, but it looks that US doesn't want to have so closest ally in this situation. China, Russia. In Bosnia, there is a perception, typical perception, that the Russians are more in favor of Serbs, that the Germany means Europe is more favoring Croats, and that US, because they believe that the Bosniaks are the biggest victim in, that they are for the Bosniaks. And if they fight, what can we expect in fragile, compromised country like Bosnia? We can just expect new problems, because when every side has some sort of the supporter, the problems will arise. And these days, we are close to see that. Additional reason why it was positive at that time was the fact that the region was united regarding the Bosnia. Croatia supported the Dayton Agreement, Serbia supported the Dayton Agreement, and for Bosnia it was extremely important that the Turkey also supported the Dayton Agreement. 20 years ago, when I was a Minister of Foreign Affairs, regional situation was much better than these days. At that time, just 6 years after the war, when we had a meeting with in Brussels with the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the European Union, there was always one of us speaking on behalf of the region. Today, no way. Although we are smaller number, at that time even Croatia was. So can you imagine, Croatia, Albania, Serbia, Bosnia, and they agreed that one of us will speak on behalf of the region. Today this is not possible, not at all. At that time, 20 years ago, just shortly after the war, it was normal to have trilateral meetings of Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia. It didn't happen in the last 10 years. And they are the neighbors. And if you have these tensions, this is This is not very good. And coming back to the first precondition, at that time, 20 years ago, I was together with Minister Ivanov in NATO headquarters on the session of Partnership for Peace. Russia was in Brussels, in the NATO, being in Partnership for Peace. That was 20 years ago. So now, very bad situation there. There is also regionally not so good situation. I was in 2003 also the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Thessaloniki summit. I think everybody forgot that. That was summit which promised to the Western Balkan at that time that we will be very soon members. You cannot imagine how that was enthusiastic in the region. Based on that, we in Bosnia, in 2005 or 6, I can't remember exactly, we agreed about the building common army. Less than 10 years after the war. And we have Serbs, Croats, and Bosniak in a single army. And this was not imposed by our king, foreigner. It was agreed among us, based on this positive attitude. 2004, huge enlargement, 10 new members. I was also in that at that time, additional positive atmosphere. And then, in 2005, I was in an informal lunch which take 4 to 5 hours of the heads of the states and the prime ministers from, at that time, dominated political group, European People Party, and then some of the members, I still don't want to tell the names of them, who said, after Croatia, there will be no enlargement for a decade. Very influential, not coming from the small countries. I didn't mention the name. But you know, can you imagine then, group of the countries, and we were there. It was not, nobody told me that. I was there at that meeting. On the public scene, our doors are open. In reality, we saw that this closed, and to be very honest, that was in 2005, so we are now 2 decades after that, which shows very clearly that we lost that. So if you have that situation, that the big powers have some sort of the local players, they don't invest in these local players. These players support that or that country because they believe it's useful for them. They will have more support. That creates a conflict. If there is no European perspective, which is the only way to stabilize the situation in the region and to make all these local, small things irrelevant by definition, because we have to accept the broader rules, not to fight among us who has right and who not. What can we expect in the region, which is well known based on the conflicts? So, for first time, maybe it's because I'm becoming older, and by definition, older people are a little bit more pessimistic than we are when you are young. I'm not so optimistic that the new conflicts are not possible. These days, we are witnessing a big challenge in my country, because in my country, you have always mainly 2, if not 3, different visions of the Bosnia. Bosniaks, who are majority, they have close to 50%, they would like to have a Bosnia without the entities, without a single president, single government, single parliament, which means domination of the majority, which immediately create a fear of the smallest group about their identity. And they are trying to protect themselves. In that, my people, the Serbs, are more extreme. The majority of them would like to have independent RS, Republika Srpska, independent if it's possible. And if you have different players on the global scene, local politicians who are trying, to make to be re-elected again. They can feed these emotions of the people, and the conflict can start. International community is tired of intervention. No one is able to send now, like it was after the war, 70,000 soldiers, which were mainly from the Western countries, but also including Russia at that time in Bosnia. Who will send that forces now? Europe is, for us, the key player. And they have, if they promise something, they have to do it. I don't want even to mention the case of Macedonia. They were blocked. Greece insisted to change the name, which is very sensitive. They changed the name. And they couldn't have, although it was promised to them, even the date of the beginning of negotiations, who could be in 5-6 years. Even the date was not, for so sensitive issue in the region. And then, few years later, after the war in Ukraine, now again they said, you will be the members after the war. So I told to my European friends, why didn't you inform us that the war is precondition? We are able, we know how to do it. We can make it every day if you... It's a joke, but it's reality. We have a chance to be the member because of the war in Ukraine, and not because of any other reasons. Maybe I'm becoming a little bit too crazy, but I just want to tell you that this is our reality. Unfortunately, this is our reality. And I can imagine the Ukrainians' optimism which they have that they will be the members of the European Union. But they don't know that my colleagues from Montenegro, they are statistically insignificant. 600 people, so easy, 600,000 people, so easy, without any influence, even the 0-point-something influence on the change of the financial scene in Europe. They believe that they will be the members in the next 3 years. I said to them, I'm ready to pay the lunch for the whole government if you will be the members before the 2030. And in that case, I will again pay the lunch. And Ukraine, which will completely change the position of Poland, of all these countries who having benefits. Honestly, I don't think that this is realistical. And can you imagine them to, once they understand that this is not so easy and that the chances are not very big, how big disappointment that will be. So, coming to the end, my advice after being so long in politics, don't promise if you don't want to deliver. But if you promise something, in spite of all difficulties, you have to deliver. That's the only way how this can function. And unfortunately, I personally think that we are in a, as Boris said, really crossroad. And if you ask me how I see that, I think that we will be very soon have a new Yalta. This big power will say, this is my part of the world, don't intervene there. They will agree. Maybe I can look very naive. The only force which can change that is basically the European Union. I don't see any other. Maybe if the European Union is able to deal in that way, I see one ally, potential ally, and don't kill me, please, after this is China. Honestly, China didn't intervene militarily for how many decades? I can't remember when. And I see that maybe I'm again a little bit crazy, even myself. I don't see any other possible alliance which can be based on the interest to have rules in the world than these two. Europe, because it's, in spite of all, problems, the most successful multilateral institution in the history of the world. Europe, in spite of all problems, survived huge financial crises. Everybody said that the euro will be disaster. It's not. Survived Greece financial crisis, survived migrant crisis, survived Brexit. And I still believe that it is, and it's based on compromise. And what we need in the modern world then, these two things, multilateral institutions and compromise. So hope that in spite of all my pessimistic views and relatively bad experience, that this utopia presented by Ivo will become reality. Thank you very much.